Hello, and thank you for joining me again today on the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. As many know, this past Sunday was Bereaved Mother's Day, and this coming Sunday is Traditional Mother's Day. I have seen some people recently who don't like there being a different day for bereaved mothers. Some see it as insulting because it implies that we aren't real mothers or that we can't be a part of the real traditional Mother's Day. For me personally, I see it as something that can help lost moms, not something that was ever intended to hurt them. Traditional Mother's Day itself can be incredibly painful for so many, and this provides a separate day that we can reflect on our babies and our motherhood. And for many, we choose to recognize ourselves as mothers on both of these days. Lost moms are definitely deserving of recognition on both days. So in my opinion, try not to look at it as trying to separate you out from the, quote, real moms, but instead as a day to honor us specifically. So today's organization spotlight is from Jenny with Foreverly Changed. Here is what she had to say. My name is Jenny Rogers. I am the founder of Foreverly Changed, a nonprofit that helps families in West Texas with funeral expenses for their NICU baby or recently discharged NICU baby. My husband Hal and I became first-time parents on January 3rd, 2018, to Everly when I was 30 weeks and 3 days pregnant. She was diagnosed with IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction, when I was 25 weeks pregnant. We had prepared for a lengthy NICU stay due to her prematurity and her 1-pound size. However, her NICU stay was only 6 days when she developed NEC and was called to heaven. Hal and I learned firsthand the expense of burying a baby. We knew we could afford to bury her, but it sure wasn't a planned expense. Unbeknownst to us, our family paid for her funeral and burial plot. They couldn't do anything for our grief, so they helped the only way they knew how. In the months following Everly's loss, I knew I was being called to start a nonprofit. 2023 turned out to be the year that jump-started it all. October 30th, 2023, Foreverly Changed was formed. We formed it with the same mindset as 2 Corinthians 1:4. He comforts us in all of our troubles so that we can comfort others. NICU babies tend to have a larger hospital bill since their care is more specialized. Everly's bill before insurance was $151,000. Parents may also be out of work longer due to their baby being in the NICU. I had been on light duty for 4 weeks and bed rest for 1 week. I ended up having a C-section, so I was then out of work 6 more weeks. These were a few of the main factors when we decided who we wanted to be able to help in the beginning. We pay the funeral home or cemetery directly, so the family has one less thing to stress over between planning a funeral and writing an obituary. Within the first 6 weeks, before we even had our 501c3 status, we were able to help 2 families needing assistance with funeral expenses. Our goal in the years to come is to be able to expand our service area. We don't want anyone to feel they aren't able to give their baby a funeral. We would love for you to check out our website and social media to see where we are led next. You can follow their social media on Instagram or Facebook at Foreverly Changed, or go to the website at foreverlychanged.com. Thank you so much, Jenny, for sharing about your organization with us. Today, I am talking with Roxy. She went through fertility struggles, including being diagnosed with unexplained infertility. She had 2 failed IUIs and then went through IVF. Roxy had a chemical pregnancy and an 8-week miscarriage of her daughter Luna, who was conceived through IVF.
Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Roxy. Roxy, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so I am based in Atlanta, Georgia, in the States. I'm a little bit of everything when it comes to professionally. I'm a therapist. I work with individuals on the autism spectrum. I'm also a writer and have been published twice in multi-author books, one of which is my story of my daughter, Luna. I host healing circles for women, but I also am just a human who loves to travel. My husband and I think traveling is our love language. We can, I mean, we're going to Japan for a month in a month. So traveling is just a huge part of us, and part of our healing as well. And I have a cat, and yeah.
Do you have a favorite place that you've traveled?
That's a really good question. It's a really hard question. So I would say equally two places. I did a study abroad in Paris and I returned there with my now husband when we were just dating, and Paris will forever have just this important, special place in my life. And my other one is Thailand. I think Thailand is just the most magical, beautiful place I've ever been to. But then when I say that, I feel like I'm betraying all the other places I've been to. So yeah.
You're like, they're all amazing. I don't want to hurt their feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I've never had a chance to go to Thailand, but I've heard really good things about it. So maybe I'll make it over there at some point.
Yeah.
So, do you mind talking a little bit about your infertility and loss journey?
Yeah. So it's going to probably be emotional as my due date for my daughter is this weekend. So that's just kind of woven into today's interview, emotionally speaking. But my husband and I, we've been trying to conceive for just over 3.5 years now. I think it's January 2020 is when we officially started trying to conceive. October 2019 is like, we'll see if it happens, it happens. So it's those like little timelines. It's been a journey. In the beginning, we just thought I was dreaming of my daughter Luna for years and years and years. And so I just thought, well, if she's already showing up, then we just, we'll be that couple that hiccups and gets pregnant. And how lucky are we? And we move on with our lives. But that's not what happened. Month after month, my very reliable period just kept coming. 6 months into it, we began to suspect something was up. But the doctors were like, you have to wait a year, which is just so great to hear. A year into it, I started seeing a doctor and I got diagnosed with unexplained infertility, which I just find to be the most annoying diagnosis under the sun. I had a chemical pregnancy about a year and a half, naturally conceiving, which just broke my heart because that was my first pregnancy. I'm about to start crying now. And then we started fertility treatments 2 years into it, two IUIs that failed. We started IVF. I actually really enjoyed the egg retrieval process. I felt like it was putting the power back into my hands, which was really incredible because I feel like infertility is like the stripping away of power and also stripping away of your innocence. And so IVF, for me, I was like, I can control this. And this is, I'm putting the shots in my body. And I made it all a ritual. And it was just, I really enjoyed it. And we had this beautiful, bountiful harvest of eggs. Like we're very lucky in that aspect. Uh, I don't want to say the number unless you ask, because I know that's like a sore subject for some women, but we had a good amount. One girl, all boys, and I was like, there's our Luna. We implanted her, or we transferred her on 12/22/22. On January 2nd, I found out I was pregnant. And then we lost her at 8 weeks and 3 days.
I'm
Yeah. And
so
then
sorry
for after that as well. So
oh, yeah. Well, I'm so sorry for, all that you've had to go through. I feel like, we went through infertility as well due to PCOS. And although we didn't do IVF, we did other fertility treatment. And I just remember thinking at the time, like, okay, infertility is like the hurdle I'm going to have to cross.
yeah.
And then you get hit with the loss and you're like, I mean, like, why am I getting hit with both of these,
Yeah, that feels really true to me. I remember when I was like in the pit of infertility, I was like, I just have to get pregnant. I honestly never even thought pregnancy loss was going to be in our story. I think just because infertility was so intense. And then with pregnancy loss, I'm just like, I call it like the double whammy. It's just so, it's like grief on top of grief. And so it's still really raw, obviously, because I'm still in it. But no, I don't think anyone could have ever prepared me for this roller coaster.
Did you know anybody else who had gone through it before you?
No. My sister easily conceived. Everyone I know easily conceived. My best friend easily conceived. I'm the only one out of my friend group. I've made friends since going through IVF. I call them like my IVF sisters, but out of my family and friends that existed before, I'm the pioneer, which is pretty lonely, and which I'm sure you're familiar with.
And I know you mentioned having an unexplained diagnosis. So, I mean, I'm sure they've done lots of testing and things, and they just can't pinpoint what the problem is.
Yeah, I mean, even tomorrow I have a biopsy. So I made a lot of eggs. I'm really fertile. And so we know that fertility isn't the issue. We know that my husband's fertility isn't the issue. There's just something happening between the eggs being made and the embryos being made and the baby staying. So, which is just, yeah, I'm still wrapping my brain around that piece, because you never think that there's so many steps. Like you just think, I mean, we get taught as like little girls, like, don't look at a boy because you'll get pregnant. And then you realize it's not that easy. And then there's all these steps of like, okay, like with IVF, I was like, great, we made all these eggs. And to me, I was like, we have all these options. I can have our little Luna, and then we can have boys, and this is going to be like a piece of cake. And I didn't realize that our hurdle would be to keep the baby.
Yeah, I think, when they suggest IVF, I mean, I know they go over like percentages and stuff like that, but it seems like, why would this not work? Like, we're controlling all the aspects of it. So how could it possibly not work?
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, even my doctors are confused, which is why we're doing all these tests right now. But it's just part of the unexplained part. I feel like science just hasn't caught up to what's going on. And we just get to be the living guinea pigs.
Yeah, I feel like, I mean, there has to be something, right? Like, I feel like nothing can be
Right.
happening for no reason, even if we don't know the reason yet.
Exactly.
But yeah, I definitely understand the frustration there, because it's like, maybe if you did know, like, maybe you could, do something to control it, or maybe not. Like, I don't know, but
Yeah.
just not knowing, even me, like knowing the PCOS diagnosis. I mean, there are ways to control aspects of it, but it's still not like, it's still not like a clear cut, like, this is what you do and it for sure works. That makes sense.
Yeah. And I think the unknown is the really hard part. I had one of my IVF sisters say to me, and she was like, if we knew in 2024, 2025, we would be pregnant, we would be able to like move through this grief with more certainty. Like, okay, well, I have to wait. It's just a waiting game. But I think so much of it is just that unknown. And we want to tell ourselves like it's going to happen. And I'm going to tell myself it's going to happen. But also in the back of my mind, there's we don't know. And so I think that's the hard part, is balancing, was my only pregnancy the one that I lost? Am I going to have a rainbow baby? And I think like there's just that unknown piece is where to me, the hardest part of the grief is, especially right now where I'm so raw in my loss that it's really hard for me to be around pregnant women or baby showers. It's just like, it's just not going to happen. And so then also struggling with well, do people think I'm just jealous? And it's just so much that I feel like there's just not a voice for people that are going through this. I just don't think it exists. And I think people like you, and there's other advocates that are really speaking out. It's really helpful, because you don't know until you go through it. And even my friends we have a really great support system. But there's some of them that like have chosen to like really dive into the psychology of it. And there's some that I know that they're just like tapped out. We're almost at year 4. They're like, and you can't blame them. So it's a roller coaster.
So that was going to actually be my next question. So about your support system, have you found a good support system in your family and friends, or has it been people that you didn't expect it to be, or?
Both, actually. So For infertility, my best friend, who I know will be listening, so shout out to Nicole. I mean, I feel like she's an angel. Just the way that she held space when she got pregnant, and I just never met anyone who dove into someone's story when they were experiencing something so joyous, and she held space for my grief in such a way that, like, the bond that I have with her strengthened, and the bond that I have with her daughter is really strong because of that. And I have to remind myself, like, that's what makes her so special. um and then we had friends checking in on us, but it really wasn't until pregnancy loss that I honestly felt like our community stepped in like we were going to war. Like, our house was flooded with flowers. And not Some of our friends did step away, which is fine, but some of my friends who stepped forward, especially three of my girlfriends who live really close by, like, we got closer through infertility and my pregnancy loss, and they're not trying to conceive, but it's like they just have like dove in full force. And um, I'm just really grateful for those people that haven't shied away. I just think that's like a really beautiful gift. And then my husband as well, he's in the room next door.
Has he found support as well? I know sometimes the men kind of get, left out.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, after our pregnancy loss, and I don't think people meant anything wrong or cruel, but they would look at me and they'd say, "How are you doing?" And he would just be standing right next to me. And I was like, he lost his baby too. Yeah, he has. I think he's still in protect me mode. And so I have to remember to, like, even last night, I was like, pause, check in, ask how he's doing, especially going into this due date weekend. He works in corporate America, and he's been really vocal about taking off of work, and he'll write IVF, which I think is just amazing. And he actually, in doing that, there is somebody on his team who reached out to him and was like, "My wife and I are also going through IVF." And so they've bonded, which I just think is just the coolest thing.
I love that. Yeah. Most men won't talk about that, kind of keep it private. Actually, I mean, even a lot of women don't talk about it. So
Yeah. And then he has, I mean, some of our friends that live in Florida, it's one of our friends and his wife, they always, well, we have a group chat and they're constantly checking up on both of us. But I just think his work friend has just been the most remarkable, because especially in corporate America, for him to be so brave to just put it out there, and then to have someone come forward, and they support each other, and it's quite lovely.
I love that. Yeah. I love hearing, those unexpected people that just come into your life that, you never thought, you never saw them coming, but then they end up being your biggest support.
Yeah, and with that, I mean, I've gathered like a couple IVF sisters, is what I call them, and people that I honestly met through the journey, and we're each other's lifelines. It's like we know this part of life that nobody else can understand. So texting each other on the days that we're waiting, or texting each other on the beta days, and it's like a weird sisterhood that nobody wants to be part of, but I think that you desperately need if you're in it, because it's just so hard to understand.
So did you find like the infertility and loss community while you were going through it, like from the beginning, or like while you were already in your journey, or like where did you kind of find that support?
Through friends. So my first IVF sister is it's my best friend's husband's childhood best friend's cousin. And they were like, "You have to connect with her." I won't say her name for privacy reasons. And so I found her on Instagram, and we just started talking, and we were starting IVF around the same time. Our journeys were kind of like off and on. I think she was a little bit right before me. I had my pregnancy loss before her. Unfortunately, she also then joined Infertility and Pregnancy Loss Club. And so we have like, it's just, we were able to really support it. We still really support each other. Right now, we're both taking a break. So it's really interesting how our paths cross. My other one was my high school best friend's childhood best friend. And then my high school best friend also connected me with one of her current best friends. So I think I'm really open about my journey, and I'm a writer. And so I use my social media platform to just talk about it a lot. And I think that's really helped people, it helped me open the doors to be able to receive people coming into my life.
I feel like when you start to share your own story and talk about it, it attracts those people too. Cause like, "Oh, I've been through that too. Maybe I should reach out." Or,
Exactly.
Helps
Yeah.
people not feel alone, because infertility and loss are both really lonely times.
Absolutely. They're extremely isolating. And even we're so lucky we have a massive support system, and it's this bizarre experience of being really supported. And I know that my husband, Sean, and I are really lucky we have a big support system. And even in that, we both feel so alone. And so I don't even know, like, it really puts it in perspective of what if we didn't have this and how hard would that be? And most of our friends have stayed with us, but the couple few that have lingered off I don't blame them. I'm not mad at them, but it's hurt really bad. And so it makes me wonder, like, what would it feel like if all your friends left, So to me, it's made me have a fire in my belly to be even louder about my experience, so that my hope is that by talking about it, people who aren't going through it know how to support somebody, and they know to lean in rather than step away. And the people that are going through it know that they're not alone.
Now, have you had to deal with any of the insensitive comments that, sometimes people
Oh, yeah.
say?
All of them. I mean, everything happens for a reason. And I'm saying this in quotes for the podcast people that can't see. After we lost our daughter, everything happens for a reason. I really hate that. I'm like, that's really easy for you to say as you're holding your baby that you prayed for. Like, what's the reason? I also really don't like God wanted an angel. I'm like, well, cool, then volunteer your baby to be the angel. Like, I don't mean to be insensitive, but I'm like, but that's what it sounds like to me. I'm like, once again, I feel like those comments are said from a place of privilege to a person who's grieving, and they're so invalidating. I also really hate in God's time when you're going through infertility and you're on year 4, and then someone who hiccuped and got pregnant says that. And all as I'm saying this not in a malicious way, but it's really a perspective of privilege. It's really easy to say that when you got pregnant easily, to look at someone who's going through something so hard, to say, like, in God's time, when it's like, okay, well,
They're like, that means nothing to me. Okay.
it's nothing to me. Yeah. And then, of course, the other things of, like, I had someone tell me that sharing my story was giving them mental health issues. And I think that one really hurt. And I was just like, okay. But I think
that doesn't even make sense.
It doesn't. I think for the most part, I've, like, really learned that I'm just not going to be quiet. And I feel like those insensitive comments, to me, it's more of a reflection of how in society we are not taught to support people grieving. And so most of those comments are said because the person who is holding space hasn't learned how to hold space. So they want to make that space go away and just talk about rainbows and butterflies. And I think when they meet me and I am like, I'm going to say my daughter's name, going to talk about it. And if you're uncomfortable, you're welcome to leave, but I'm not going to diminish my story or her existence to make you comfortable.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think most people just want us to kind of like sweep it under and like, oh, let's just pretend that didn't happen so we don't have to be uncomfortable and talk about it. And I'm like, yeah, no, because she existed and I'm going to talk about her. Sorry.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people, just with pregnancy loss, like, they're like, well, it happens. It's so common. It happens to many people. I'm like, well, it's happened to, like, I'm not every single person. And it happened to me. And I'm holding my story. And for as long as I breathe, we're going to say Luna's name. And we're going to talk about her pregnancy. And I'm going to share my pregnancy stories because I loved being pregnant. And I'm allowed to share that. And I'm also allowed to talk about how much it hurt to lose her. We would never tell somebody who lost a spouse or a parent or a best friend that they weren't allowed to speak about the person that they lost. That's an unfathomable thing to say to somebody. But yet with pregnancy loss, women are told that they're not allowed to talk about their babies all the time.
I don't know what makes it like such a different kind of loss where people think like,
I know. I kind of think that people think it's contagious. So, like, I feel like they're like, oh, well, your infertility and your pregnancy loss, if you talk about it too much, it's going to jump off of you and reach me. I'm like, it's not the cooties. It's not how it works. Like, it's just because you hear a story of pregnancy loss doesn't mean that you're going to lose your baby. It just makes you an empathetic human who's holding the totality of women's stories. And if we're going to hold stories of pregnant women, we need to hold the stories of the women whose babies didn't make it to earth, like, period.
yeah, because those stories matter, those babies matter. I mean, why do we only get to talk about the babies who made it safely here?
I know. Yeah. And someone asked me, like, if whenever we do have our baby that makes it earthside, they're like, are you going to stop talking about Luna? And Sean and I were like, my husband's name is Sean, we're like, no, our baby's going to know. Like, why would we just pretend that this experience didn't happen? It's just bizarre to me.
People say the weirdest thing.
They do.
Sometimes I'm like, what were you even thinking with that? Like, you probably weren't thinking.
You probably weren't. I'm like, I don't know if you were trying to make me feel better, but I'm just, no.
I think what people don't understand is like when you have a living baby after your loss, it doesn't mean you just have the one living baby. You have two. You have, the one who came first and then the next one. Like one doesn't replace the other one.
It doesn't replace. And I was at my chiropractor's office and I heard the most amazing response. I love my chiropractor office. And they asked a mom who was like 38 weeks pregnant. They're like, is this your first pregnancy? And she's so confident. She was like, this is my third, but this is my first that I'll hopefully be able to meet my child earthside. And I was like fresh out of my miscarriage. And I remember just like looking up and I was like, I needed to be in this room to hear her respond in that way. Cause it made me feel so happy that there's women out there that are honoring their babies. I mean, she's very easily could have said yes, but she consciously chose to answer and to honor all three of her children in that one sitting. And I just thought that was so beautiful.
I love that. That's such a hard question, because sometimes I really just don't want to go into it with people, but then you feel bad because you're not bringing them up. But I'm like, I don't want to do this at the grocery store or at
Yeah. And I think that's where like the personal boundaries. So I always like ask myself, like, do I want to go into this right now? And if I don't, I will answer in the way that I know they expect it. And I always kind of just say like a little something in my head to myself, to Luna, like, I'm not ignoring you. I just don't really feel like getting involved. But then sometimes when I feel really spicy, I do it. And I find that the more I speak about her and the more I say her name, the more brave I get. I feel like she has fundamentally changed who I am, and I'm a different person because I got to carry her and I am her mother, and I feel like she literally makes me so brave, and I'm so grateful for her for that.
And I love her name. Where did you come up with her name?
I didn't actually. So when I was dating my now husband, it was like in 2019, we were living in DC. I actually wrote about this experience in a book. I have very vivid dreams. I've had very vivid dreams my whole life. And we were not even thinking about getting engaged. I was absolutely not thinking about being a mom. That was like not even in our radar. I think we were like just 20 something, like living life. And I had this dream of this little girl in this white little dress, and she came skipping towards me. We were in this field, and her arms were just outstretched, and she had this giant smile, and I was just mesmerized by her. And she stopped in front of me and pulled on my dress, and in a very sassy and almost like annoying tone, like how you would talk to someone who should know who you are. She kind of yelled at me, but not really yelled. She was like, Mommy, don't you know my name? My name is Luna Bell, and Bell's my middle name. And I was just standing there in my dream. I was like, what? And she's like, my name is Luna. And then I woke up and I woke my now husband, my boyfriend up. I was like, I met our daughter. Her name is Luna. And I just started crying. And so, I mean, we didn't really have a choice to name her.
Such a powerful dream.
Yeah. Yeah. It
I
is.
love that. It's a beautiful name.
Thank you. And I love it too, because it gives us so many connections. I feel like we're so connected to, like, when we look at the moon and people will send us pictures of the moon and they're like, Luna was out bright tonight. And so it's just really beautiful.
That's very special. I love that.
Yeah.
So are there any particular things that have helped you with your grief?
Writing. I'm a writer, but I think just writing my life away, I think letting the emotions just completely exist outside of me, and also like without censoring, because I feel like in society we're really taught to censor. Like, people will ask how you're doing and they only really want to know like a droplet of how you're doing, because then it gets too sad. Unless you have like those friends that, like, I have that handful of friends that they're like, just give it to me. But I feel like with writing, I can like really let it out, and I'm able to write love letters to her. We bought her a little journal when I was pregnant, or when we were pregnant, and we've been filling it up since we lost her, of just like letters to her of when we think about her. I think talking to her and talking about her, for me, I know some people, privacy is what really helps them, but for me, I need to talk about her. I honestly don't know how to exist in spaces with people who will not allow me to. And I feel like I've developed really strong boundaries, and it's not even that I don't want to be in those spaces, just like, it's like if someone told you not to talk about your arm, it's so I feel like surrounding myself with people who know that one moment I could be crying and the next moment we could be pouring a glass of wine and talking about something different, and who don't get frazzled by it. That's been really, really helpful. And hearing other women's stories. I feel like for me, I felt so alone because I was the first out of my friend group, and still so far the only out of my friend group. And so being able to just reach for stories of women who are going through the trenches, and some of them have survived, some of them are still in the trenches, but it makes me feel like there's like a sisterhood of us who all understand this unique pain. And traveling, I mean, we're going to the ocean this weekend to honor Luna's due date, because I spent the majority of my pregnancy in Aruba. We're not going to Aruba because I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back there, but we're just going to the ocean, and we're going to spread roses in the ocean. And we made dinner reservations on her due date. And when they asked, what are we celebrating? My husband was like, we're celebrating our daughter who died via miscarriage, and we want to honor her life. And just like made me so proud to be his wife. I was like, I love that you wrote that. So yeah, honoring her, I think, has been the best medicine.
That sounds like such a special way to honor her. I love that you're doing that.
Me too.
I know sometimes it's hard. That day is obviously hard every year, and it's hard to know, what the right thing to do is. But I think that no matter what you're doing, even if you're just sitting at home, like doing nothing, thinking of them, I think it's the right thing.
Same. And I think that's like the most important thing, is like, there's no right or wrong way to grieve. It's just whatever works for you. And I think for Sean and I, it was also just getting away. I feel like I needed to be away from every single living person. And the ocean is just so calming. And it's a place that brings me back to her, especially since that's where I was pregnant with her. And so I just really want to go back there and just feel that piece of her again.
I know earlier you mentioned, that sometimes like jealousy can kind of pop up with, seeing other people pregnant and that kind of thing. Have you found that, for me, I know that when I see other people who have struggled get pregnant, like other people have been through infertility and loss, like it doesn't upset me as much. Does that happen with you, or?
100% same. And I see a therapist once a week. I've tried to make sense of it. And she's like, it is what it is. Stop psychoanalyzing it. She's like, you're in a sisterhood. She's like, So yeah, people who have gotten pregnant after miscarriage or infertility, I feel like their pregnancy is the biggest one, because I need to hear success stories. Like, I need to hear people who got pregnant after loss. I need to hear IVF success stories, infertility success stories, or else like, what are we doing? So to me, it's like, they're lighting a lantern of hope. And it's like, I feel like this full body. Yes, those are like the only baby showers and pregnant people I can really be around. I also feel like with that group of people, they are like, they're acutely aware that they're holding their joy with your grief. And so without saying any words, there's just this like understanding of sisterhood. Whereas women, and lucky for them, happy for them, you go them. But women who haven't struggled, or women who don't hold space for me to talk about it, that's like another really big trigger. I don't know how to celebrate them. Like, and I'm happy for them. They probably get really good baby shower gifts because I feel guilty, but it's really hard for me. I also found pregnancies that happened after my loss. So pregnancies that I should have been pregnant with that person, those are impossible. Like, it's just, it's literally impossible. And that was kind of really hard because I had multiple people who I really love that have been pregnant during this time, and I just can't see them. Even like, it's like family members, cousins, and I hope that, they know, but I think that's like a really real thing, because it's like a visceral visual reminder of what I lost, and on a literal timeline, because I should, like, it's like, and this should be pregnant. I don't know. It's weird. It's crazy.
Yeah, I felt the same way. I actually, when I had one of my miscarriages, I had a friend who got pregnant at the same time, and I miscarried. She went on to have her baby, and I couldn't go to the baby shower. I couldn't do any of it. And it's just, yeah, you're right. It's just like a visual reminder every single time you see it of my baby should be that age right now.
Yeah, it's really hard to explain. And I think it comes off as jealous. When my best friends got pregnant, I think like a month after me, and I haven't been able to see her. And my cousin was pregnant a month before me, and we were so excited when I told her I was pregnant. We're like, we're gonna have babies at the same time. And luckily, my cousin like really understood when she found out about my pregnancy loss. Like she was like, I like, you don't have to reach out to me at all unless you want to. And I was like, I love you. I'm so happy for you. I'm going to be the best aunt. Like, I'm fine with babies. I'm like, but like, I'm going to drop off the map, and I'm probably going to have to mute you because seeing your belly grow, it's literally like you're watching what your body should be doing. And it's a grief and a pain that I never was prepared for. And I still don't have words to articulate what that feels like.
I feel like too that as time goes on, like the grief kind of changes too, and things that you didn't even expect can like trigger the feelings in you.
Yeah. And I think I'm curious to see how it'll morph after her due date. Cause I know right now everything has been like what I should be. Like even right now, I'm very acutely aware like she should be in my arms or I should be massively pregnant. You know, like it's a weird mind game. I hope that I'm able to not be so affected, but I also know like it is what it is. I think more than anything, I've gained this massive compassion for the really hard road to motherhood and how, as society, we really need to understand the grief that comes into it. We shouldn't expect people to go to baby showers when they're struggling with infertility or pregnancy loss. Like that's just that should not even be something that we are expecting from somebody. Just like you wouldn't expect someone who went through a divorce to go to a wedding because that might hurt too much. Like you're even laughing. You're like, of course not. Why would, you know, we shouldn't expect that. And I feel like there's a different expectation because I feel like because infertility and pregnancy loss, there's this knowing that you want a baby so bad that I feel like the people that aren't experiencing, they're like, well, why aren't you happy for me? Because you want it so much. And it's like, that has nothing to do with anything.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're right. People think it's jealousy, and it's like, no, it's not. I mean, maybe a little bit. Okay, maybe a little bit, but it's so much more than that.
Yeah, and I don't really think it, I mean, yes, jealousy, but I don't think it's jealousy in like the way that we define jealousy. I really think it's a marker of grief. I feel like like for me, going into those spaces, it puts me in I mean, I come home and I just cry for days and days and days. Even there's some things on television, like my husband the other day, we were watching something and somebody gave birth, which I was like, okay, I can do this. I can handle like a birth story. And then they were like, it was a surprise gender. And they're like, it's a girl. And my husband and I just both started crying and we changed the channel. And so it's like interesting, like the things that'll get you. It's you're not prepared until you're on your knees crying. And if you can protect yourself so that you're not always on your knees crying, why wouldn't you?
Right. Yeah, I remember watching a show that not a show I ever expected to see pregnancy loss on. It was like The Walking Dead, honestly. And I was like, I mean, I'm like, okay, this is like zombies and stuff. And then like there was a stillbirth on there, and I was like, I can't, like, I just can't do this. And yeah,
Yeah.
it's just like, come on, even the zombie shows aren't safe now, you know?
Yeah, and it's really interesting the things like that get you. My husband and I, we have this really weird, it's a weird thing that we do. It's a terrible storyline. Please don't judge us, but we go through this thing. We're like, let's watch all the Twilights. And it's like our way of like mindless TV. And it was like right after my miscarriage, because my brain just wasn't working. It's sometimes it still goes through phases, but I was like, I don't need anything that's going to make me think. Like this is something from like my younger years that it's just I can fall asleep and wake back up. I'm not missing anything. And then in the last, maybe when she gets pregnant, I was like, how does she get pregnant from a dead man? And John, my husband, was like, we're gonna change it. I was like, it doesn't make sense.
I get it though. Like, I mean, it's like, even though you know it's like TV, it's like, why is it so easy for them?
You know, I was like, he's not even alive. Yeah.
So, is there any advice you have for people that are going through infertility and loss?
Oh yeah. gather your people. Like, not everyone is going to be comfortable speaking publicly like you and I are, which is perfectly fine. But at least find somebody or a tree, the same tree that you go to and you talk to that tree. Like, and I am saying that in complete seriousness, like, let your story be heard to some capacity, a journal, a tree, the moon, your pet, your husband. Like, do not let it live inside you, because it is, I've never been prepared for this level of grief. It is all consuming. It hits you out of nowhere. You can be laughing one moment and crying the next. And I think being able to express what you're feeling to someone or somebody who is really safe, who they won't judge you for your worst, and I'm saying worst in quotes because I don't think there's any worse, but for your deepest, darkest moments, is really important. I think also finding moments of joy, like I have like a list of things that brought me joy before I got in this journey so that I would remember. And so sometimes in my darkest days, I'm like, go outside and be barefoot, put on this song and dance around. And so sometimes I'm doing it while I'm crying, but it's like to remember that part of me that existed before, because I feel like infertility, it strips away your innocence. And then pregnancy loss, the little innocence that you have left, I think it just strips it away even more. And I think that's the hardest part, is we get stripped from this like beautiful, innocent way of living, when motherhood should be innocent. Like, most women, they find out they're pregnant, they pee on a stick. It's so joyful. And it's like rainbows and butterflies. And for us, it's so hard. And so for us to remember when we're in this journey, to remember to be that version of ourselves that existed that freely and innocently, I think is really, really important.
I love that idea of making a list of the things that make you happy. And you're right, you can do it while you're crying, but you're at least doing them.
Yeah, I do them when I'm crying a lot. And I mean, and it's simple things. Cause like sometimes, like, I mean, I don't have the bandwidth to do anything crazy. I mean, unless for traveling, but my husband plans it and I just go along. But literally just going outside barefoot. My newest thing is seeing the sunrise, like waking up and just sitting on the porch and watching the sunrise, and or putting Florence and the Machine on and dancing. I mean, it's like the simple things. I think those simple things is what like reminds us of, at least it reminds me of, like, the beautiful joy in life. And then that trickles on, and your people, like my support system, my girlfriends that just show up over and over and over again. I just feel like they're angels. And one thing that I do is I tell them all the time, I'm like, I mean, we'll be having wine, and I will just like look at one of them, like on a wine night, I'm just like, I just need to thank you for not leaving. I just need to thank you for showing up. I need to thank you for saying Luna's name. And then we have a moment and then we move on. But I want them to know how grateful I am, because that's such a rare, beautiful gift to give someone.
You mentioned that you wrote a book. What is the name of your book?
It's not, I didn't write a book. I was featured in a multi-author books. I want to make sure. It's called Silence No More, Empowering the Next Generation of Women. And it's every chapter is a different woman. I'm chapter 11. And so I wrote about my pre-IVF journey of infertility, of meeting Luna, and just the heartache of, expecting and having a dream daughter. Like, I really was like, oh, I'll just have sex once, and she's already in my dreams, like she'll just pop up like magic. And so it was kind of like that evolution of like settling into that unknown of infertility. It's really like a love letter to her, and I'm really glad that I did it, because I feel like I wasn't able to birth her on Earth, and so being able to birth her in other ways has just been so beautiful.
I love that it's a whole collection of stories. Are they all infertility stories, or are they?
No, there's another infertility story in there. It's just all women. It kind of reads, if you're like, I love healing circles. And so it reads like you're in a healing circle. So every chapter is just a different story from a different woman. So you could like read one, close it up, open the book up immediately after, open it up like 2 months after. It's just really lovely.
So is that like something they could get on Amazon, or where?
I have it right here, but you can see it. It's just really short.
Oh, yeah, I like the cover too. That's pretty.
I know the publisher did such a good job with it. Yeah, they can just get it on Amazon. But I think it kind of goes with the same idea of like telling your story, and it doesn't have to be public. I'm a big believer of like we have boundaries, and so we're allowed to decide how far to go. And you can tell your story publicly one day and then decide like never mind. But there is like healing magic in having your story being witnessed, even if even if you're writing it down in your journal and you're the one witnessing it. I think it's just really important.
So is there anything else that you'd like to share or add?
I don't know, there's so much. um, I don't know. I think for anyone listening, especially the women who are going through this journey, it's just to remember that you're stronger than you realize. And even in the moments that you feel like you can't do this, like the fact that you're doing it is just remarkable. And this is not anything anybody would ever wish upon their worst enemy. I've never met a woman that was like, I would wish this on anyone. It's a hard road. And I think, just I don't know, just extending love to yourself, and mothering yourself. Like we all want to be mothers, whether it's mother to a second child or third or mother for the first time. And I think for me, more than anything, I've learned to mother myself and to like really connect with my body, especially because I felt so betrayed by my body after my chemical pregnancy. I just like leaned in and I was like, nobody understands this grief but my womb and I. And then after I lost Luna, I was like, once again, but even more. And I feel like I've never loved my body more than I do now, which is kind of wild. And I think that's so much because of just like the mothering. I feel like my body's grieving just like my heart is. And so to remember to just wrap your arms around yourself. I mean, there's so many times my husband and I are going on for a walk and I just start kissing my elbow and he's like, are you really proud of Roxy? I'm like, she's just so amazing. Look at what she's doing. She's putting shots in her butt. She's going to get surgeries. And I just think like that perspective to just be in awe of yourself, like you deserve it.
I know that's definitely something a lot of us struggle with. It's hard to not be angry, like feel, oh, my
Yeah.
body let me down. It didn't do what it was supposed to. Like I hate it. Like, it's hard.
And it's completely valid. And I would never invalidate anyone that feels that way. I felt that way for the longest time. It's just like an invitation to just see what it would feel like to kiss that part of you that hurts, and maybe it doesn't work for you, but maybe it does.
It doesn't hurt to try anyways, right?
Try. There's nothing dangerous in trying it. Yeah.
So if people wanted to find more information, find your account, where would they go for that?
Instagram. I'm really active on Instagram. I use it for writing. So it's at Roxy, ROXY, period, Sewell, my last name, SEWELL. I think that's the best way. I host like healing circles, but they're not infertility based, although I always end up getting someone who's infertility and pregnancy loss, which just makes my heart so happy. But yeah, a lot of my stuff is writing. And I love to connect with women. So you could even like send me a DM and we can be friends. I just think there's just something really powerful about women coming together and just saying, like, me too.
Yeah, definitely. It's always nice to know that others are there with you. They're in the trenches.
Yeah. And I'm so open that I'm a person that like welcomes those conversations. To me, when people go into my DMs and they're like, I never told anyone, but I went through IVF, or I never told anyone and I lost my baby too. It's medicine that I need as well, because I don't like in my immediate group of friends, I'm the only one. And so to me, it helps me know that I'm not alone and that there's this massive support sisterhood of us out there who are in the trenches and hoping and fighting and praying together.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your story with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Roxy, for sharing your story with us. An interesting thing that Roxy brought up is how some of the people around us seem to think that infertility or loss is somehow contagious, and they tend to avoid us. That somehow us going through it or being sad or talking about it means it will somehow affect them. Like how pregnant women don't want to hear stories about loss because then they think they might lose their baby. Or those who are trying to get pregnant don't want to hear about people struggling to get pregnant because then they think that they might have trouble. People prefer out of sight, out of mind. Let's not talk about it or acknowledge it. Let's just sweep it all under the rug so we don't have to think about it. Well, those of us who have gone through infertility and loss don't have that luxury. We don't get to just not think about it. It's a reality we're faced with every day, fears we face every day. And to not be able to talk about it with the people in our lives makes it that much harder. That would be like saying, "Oh, I'm sorry your mom or dad died, but I don't want to talk about it in case it means that my mom or dad might die." No one would ever say that to someone. So let's not say it surrounding infertility and loss. Let's normalize these conversations. And more importantly, let's normalize listening and being supportive for those going through this. I'm sorry if it makes you feel uncomfortable, but we are definitely uncomfortable with our reality. So please be that support that we need during these heartbreaking times. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. If you like the show, please leave a review or rating on Apple or Spotify. It only takes a moment and really helps the show reach more loss and infertility families. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.